the intro music. Yeah! Woohoo!
Welcome back, Star Trek Fleet Command fans, and today we're going to talk about Strange New World M'Benga, who is a solid officer. I'll go ahead and put that kind of out in the front. I will say ahead of time, Scopely, please figure out a sourcing pattern because, again, we got another officer that we're curious, how is this guy going to be sourced? We're going to add him into the Mantis refinery, or we're going to have some other type of sourcing. Maybe we'll find out next month. But at the time making this video, we can only really go over how effective he can be for you, not really his sourcing, which sucks. We need to have better sourcing. That's something we've been grabbing out for a long time, but it'd be like that. It's constantly talked about in the Discord. But let's talk about Strange New World M'Benga, how he works, where you can use him, and what he applies to for the most, average player, I would say. We're going to compare enterprises, pylums, and kind of everything in between. And obviously the logic can apply in every situation. So let's start with the Butcher of Jagal Captain's ability, which is Strange New World M'Benga increases all mitigation stats by X%. Now, mine says 5,500 because I do have him currently on the bridge. So I will show you all the regular stats here in just a second. And then finally, Fight for Peace, increasing shield health every round by 2%, maxes out at 15% once you have him maxed. So keeping your shields alive, which does actually matter. We'll show you why in a second. But before we do that, let's talk about his overall abilities in terms of like the numbers, because everybody likes numbers. So they go at the very top. You're going to see that he starts at 1,500%. And then depending on what synergizations you work with him, it can get higher. So I currently have mine at 5,500, but depending on, again, what you have, it can max out at a very, very impressive 6,500%. So you might ask, do we actually need all that? Like, is there a reason in the game to have that much? And honestly, the answer is yes. This basically is guaranteeing that if you use him in a Strange New World configuration, that you will have max mitigation without having to use, say, Spock and Uhura and Ortega to get specific mitigation versus a specific type of hostile, or Himmer versus the surveys. He's going to give it to you with everybody. So that way, if you're hitting interceptors, battleships, etc., won't matter. You will have max mitigation as you work on your stat stacking. Then the officer ability, you can see maxes out at 15%, but going from 2, working its way up and essentially doubling to the very last level. And I do feel like that does have value in the game. I guess the value is kind of like debatable. Shield health is only going to matter against really big hostiles. So this is in theory going to help you with your punch-ups. And we actually have a couple of examples of that I want to show you. And we're going to start with one that is like a serious punch-up using a Katinga. This is bringing back the Tau crew, but changing it up slightly. Now, the one drawback to this configuration that you're going to run is you're not getting the loot bonus from 5 of 11, but you will get better performance. And the reason is actually that shield regen that we just talked about, as well as better mitigation values, or guaranteed high mitigation. This is a Katinga going against a very, very powerful freebooter, and the logic actually applies to Q's trials as well. The same method can be deployed to give you a very, very big boost. As you can see, this is a lower 40s player, able to punch up to a hostile, or this is level 53, I'm sorry, but able to punch up to a hostile that's meant for me at level 50. That's pretty impressive, right? That is good, and that survivability increase is something that you can literally measure and see on the screen. That doesn't mean it has to be limited to simply examples like this. I will show you more examples because I like examples. In fact, I will show you on an Enterprise because why not? The Enterprise is classic. We love the Enterprise. I want to show you a couple of examples of Strange New World crews. Now, I do want to really point out that this is not going to, at tier 1, overtake your natural triangle runs of Strange New World, which you can see with my Enterprise here, level maxed out, going against a level 50 freebooter. Now, I took some damage, but I'm still able to kill 14 of them versus killing only maybe 5 with other configurations that don't include Pike. So the reason is, and this goes back to the officers and how they work, the reason is because of how Pike works. Pike's captain's ability is very, very strong. This doesn't mean that there aren't situations where Strange New World M'Benga can be better. But if you remember, Pike's captain's ability is basically the weaker version of Janeway, where when fighting hostile, Strange New World Pike increases the shield mitigation. I hate calling it that, but the shield bypass rate. So once you get him with full synergy, it rises up to, what, 97%, meaning only 3% of remaining non-mitigated damage makes it to your hull. It's just a very, very good ability. That doesn't make Strange New World M'Benga bad, but it does mean that if you're trying to run a full synergized crew, Pike's probably going to be better. It depends on the situation. But here you do see those type of results using an enterprise to hit freebooters, but still valuable if you're talking about having another faction grinding, ship or crew, and having even a hostile crew, because maybe you haven't taken your Pike as high as I have, which I have them at tier 3. Not necessarily that high, but it is high-ish, right? So these are not the only applications, though. I do want to show you a couple more, if you would be so kind to take a gander. Let's take a look at this Pylum hitting with a pretty well-known crew, Janeway Captain, Enterprise E Data, Enterprise E Picard. Now, I would actually swap Janeway with Picard in this one, but this is still 3 crew members that you've seen a lot of, and yet you see better run using Strange New World M'Benga here with Strange New World Pike on the side. That one, I'm not as big on the Strange New World Pike on the side, but it is better than running, say, Spock or Uhura because, well, you've already got max mitigation, so you don't need those officers. So, I mean, it's better than just running a straight crew. It's still showing the power of what M'Benga can do. The big thing is him keeping his shields up, or keeping your shields up, and that's where the value of M'Benga is to combine with that max mitigation. I feel like in general use, you're going to get a very, very good secondary crew. And I feel if you don't have the Voyager crew or the Enterprise E crew, you're going to really want to look at Strange New World M'Benga as being a potential addition to your normal set runs. That doesn't mean it's a perfect match, but I do think it's solid. As you see, this is the crew that I had out, which is what you just kind of saw in that video. But the idea is taking advantage of his captain's ability, which is almost guaranteeing you mitigation for most players in this game, unless you're hitting hostiles that are just way, way above your head. This is essentially guaranteeing you have max mitigation. Now, you also have other factors that can apply here, like I'm not currently running Strange New World Chapel Below Decks, for example, who's another really good officer that just came in the game and a rare, but I'm really hoping for sourcing to kind of come up on that before I talk about it too much. But if we're talking about taking an Enterprise out further than it can even go, this is the reason that I did that one. I mean, even with my bonus warp range, everything that I have unlocked in the 40s, remember, because there's the Angel in Disguise mission, things that can give you better warp range, the furthest I can go out, I'm able to easily handle, as you saw with a couple of different crew sets. And I think the big one here for the lower level and average level player, and this can be one of those situations where we need to ask Scopely to again source Tau. They did give Tau out completely free to play last year thanks to flash passes, but there's no consistent sourcing. But allowing you to do stuff like this, whether it's an Actian run or a freebooter run or a Q Trial hostile that you want to take in, this is where Strange New World M'Benga can really shine, because he's helping you overcome some of these new hostile types that are created with ridiculously high stats, meaning that you need these bigger power creep bonuses to overcome them. Now, whether you choose to go after him hard in a leaderboard if you see him or stuff like that, is completely up to you. I don't feel like Strange New World M'Benga is a must-have officer in today's game, but I do feel like he's very good. And there's an argument to be made for having a really good second and third crew. So the main hostile crew that I currently run is this, which is Enterprise E Picard, Enterprise E Data Janeway, which is basically just going full isolytic with loot. And I've got my critical and hull breach below decks with Hugh and Milan Torres. I do want to point out that for purpose of testing, I did not include Milan Torres and Hugh in my test, because not everybody's unlocked Hugh, and not everybody's gotten their Milan Torres to tier 4 like I have. So I took them out of the equation, so we're basically just testing M'Benga by himself. But if you give M'Benga the added damage here, you are going to see it change the, kind of like the balance of how he fares compared to other Strange New World crew, because that is going to help tremendously. Because again, he's keeping the shields alive, meaning you take less hull damage, and you can create enough damage to where you can kill them faster. Obviously, you take less. That's just simple logic. So I did a kind of a blank test, but with that in mind, that means that I now have 2 or 3 extra crews that I can run that are very effective, especially as some of you are getting more and more into the 40s, 50s, etc. I mean, we just talked about it on stream the other day, how we have now reached like 25,000 or 23,000 players in the 50s, which is a significant increase from just 6 months ago. And you're going to need crews to do that because you no longer can use Pipe and Chin. So Strange New World M'Benga is a solid pickup, something that if you're watching this after this month has ended, I would recommend you going after. How hard you go after is kind of up to you. I do feel like the more you tier him up, the better he will be, because that officer ability is really underrated, because you can lose your shields against some of these new style hostiles. But he's a solid one, good pickup, not the best, but definitely not bad. And if you are looking at him, let me know what you think in the comment section down below. If you picked him up, has he improved your gameplay? Is he working for you in a way that maybe you didn't anticipate or has been great? Or has he been worse? Let me know. Again, this is tier 1 testing, but the logic of how he works is really good long term. Live long and plunder. Stay safe with those Space Cowboys. Deuces, that's me. Catch you on the next one. And M'Benga and I are out.
An even better outro than the intro. For the Empire and glory to your house.